This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good morning, Rabbi. We have a very important share today, and we have a beautiful sheet of Mar Mekomos. There are 18 Mar Mekomos on the sheet, and hopefully we'll be able to learn it very thoroughly. There's a topic and an aspect of Pesach that is often overlooked, and that is Shvi'i Shel Pesach, the seventh day of Pesach. Now, at first glance, it seems unusual that the first day of Pesach commemorates Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the seventh day of Pesach commemorates Kriyas Yamsuf, which was a completely different miracle and a separate miracle. Why then do we combine the two miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf into one Yom Tov? The Magen praskens that we know we have a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim, remembering that we left Mitzrayim. It's a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa that we're Makayim twice a day. In the third parsha of Kriya Shema, at the end of the third parsha of Kriya Shema, we say, Laman Tizkru B'Asisam Skol Mitzvah V'Yisam Kadosh L'Nashah Ani Hashem Lekechem Asher Yitzisi Eschem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Liyos Lachem Le'Elokim Ani Hashem Lekechem. So we have in mind when we say that pasuk to Makayim the mitzvah saseh d'oraisa of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. Comes the Magen Avraham and says, the Magen Avraham, that if a person, instead of remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim, says Az Yashir is a suitable replacement to be Mekayim the mitzvah d'oraisa of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Az Yashir is an account of the Kriyas Yamsuf, and that is sufficient way to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. Not just by saying the pasuk Ani Hashem Lekechem and saying that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, but even saying Az Yashir, that is also a fulfillment of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. Paskins the Magen Avraham. Comes the Chasam Sofer in the Hagoy's Chasam Sofer and Shulchan Aruch, and the Chasam Sofer asks, how in the world could we Mekayim the mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim with Kriyas Yamsuf? Kriyas Yamsuf is not a suitable replacement for Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why not? Says the Chasam Sofer, because the pasuk says, Leman Tizkar es Yoim Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim, to remember the day that you left Mitzrayim. And Kriyas Yamsuf was not the day we left Mitzrayim. Kriyas Yamsuf was 7 days later. So how could the Magen Avraham paskin that your Yod says Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim with the Az Yashir? That is not in fulfillment of Leman Tizkar es Yoim Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim. That is the kasha of the Chasam Sofer in the Hagoy's Chasam Sofer. You got it? Magen Avraham says you're Mekayim the mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim with the Az Yashir. Frek the Chasam Sofer, how are you Mekayim the mitzvah with Kriyas Yamsuf? That's not a fulfillment of Leman Tizkar as Yoim Tzeischa. That is not Yoim Tzeischa. Comes Rabbi Kiveger and his Hagoyz on Shulchan Aruch, and he says, my son-in-law, Rav Moshe Sofer, the Bezdin of Pressburg, he asked this question of Leman Tizkar es Yom Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim, that how could you be Yotzei Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim with the Az Yashir? Az Yashir was not sung on the day that we left Mitzrayim. It was sung 7 days later. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, Toiras emes hoisa befihu shel Moshe. My son-in-law is asking good. Why? Why is he asking good? Because, says Rabbi Kiva Eger, if you look in the Mechilta says that if somebody just says Kriyas Yamsuf and he doesn't remember Yetzias Mitzrayim, Lo Yatsa, the Mechilta says explicitly, not like the Magen Avraham. The Mechilta says if somebody just remembers Kriyas Yamsuf and he doesn't remember Yetzias Mitzrayim, Lo Yatsa, befeirush against the psak of the Magen Avraham. So Rabbi, what we're here today to do is to try to answer and defend the Magen Avraham who paskins that your yoytze, the mitzvah of Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, by saying Oz Yashir, from the kasha of the Chassam Sofer, from the kasha of Rabbi Kiva Eger. Number one, it's not Yoim Tzeischa. And number two, the Mechilta says explicitly, if you mention Kriyas Yamsuf and you don't remember Yitzias Mitzrayim, Lo Yatza. Okay, so far we're doing good, right? So we begin with the Gemara Megillah on Daf Yodalad. Okay, everybody see it in front of their mind's eye? You see it, Mr. Caro?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm going to make it clear for you. Says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan, Memches Nevi'im Amdu Lahem Li Yisrael. V'lai Pichsu, V'lai Haisiru, Al Masha Kasa B'Torah, El Mikra Megillah Bavad. We had 48 prophets, and the Gemara says 7 prophetesses who stood up for the Jewish people. They did not add to the Torah, they did not detract from the Torah, with the exception of Mikra Megillah. Strike the Gemara, my Darish. How did they add the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah? Kal v'chomer! A Kal v'chomer. You ready for the Kal v'chomer? Everyone ready for the Kal v'chomer? You ready for Kal v'chomer? Uma me'avdu s'cheres amrinon shira mimisa l'chayim loy kol shekain. If from slavery to freedom we sang shira, then from death to life all the more so. Everyone hear the Kal v'chomer? Kal v'chomer is very simple. If when we left Mitzrayim, which was slavery to freedom, we sang shira, then in the times of Purim, from death to life, you should certainly sing shira. If you sing to Hashem when you're liberated, then certainly you should sing to Hashem when Hashem saves your life. Mi'im me'avdus l'cheira samrinon shira mimisa l'chayim loy kol shekain. Everyone see the Gemara? Mimisa, right? Me'avdus l'cheira samrinon shira mimisa l'chayim loy kol shekain. Says Rashi on the page. You miss Rashi. Rashi says, when did we sing shira me'avdus l'cheiros? Az Yashir. Az Yashir was the shira that we're making the Kal v'chomer from. In other words, if we sang Az Yashir me avdus l'cheiros, certainly we should sing Megillah mimisa l'chayim. You get the Kal v'chomer? Okay. Comes the Turei Even. Who wrote the
Turei? Right in the seasons, right? Well, why is Cheiros defined as only by Kriyas Yamsuf?
Oh, because that was the song that we sang.
No, but why could it say Shira when it says Me'avdus Cheiros? Cheiros occurred when we left.
Yeah, but we're making a Kal v'chomer from a shira. If they sang shira then, they should certainly sing shira now. The shira that they sang then was what? The shira that they sang then was what? Az Yashir. Az Yashir. Comes the Turei Even. Who wrote the Turei Even? This is okay. You see, look on your sheets. It's on the bottom left-hand side of the Mar Mekoimos. The Turei Even asks on Gemara Megillah Daf Yodaled. Turei Even was written by the Shagas Aryeh. He says, wait a second. If the shira that we're making a Kal v'chomer from is the shira of Az Yashir, was that Avdus L'cheiros? That wasn't Avdus L'cheiros. Avdus L'cheiros was 7 days early. The shira of Az Yashir was Misa L'chayim. Being saved from the Yamsuf was slavery to freedom or death to life. Omar Oyev Erdoif Asig Timloim Oy Nafshi Orik Charbi Toyrishem Oyadi. Paris, I'm going to sharpen my sword and bereft them. We could have drowned in the Yamsuf. That's Avdus L'cheiros. That's Misa L'chayim. And if it's Misa L'chayim, then it's not a Kal v'chomer. It should be a Mamatzinu. If when we left Mitzrayim, which was Misa L'chayim on the 7th day of Pesach, was Misa L'chayim, and we sang Shira, then the Misa L'chayim in the times of Purim, we should also sing Shira. In other words, we've just effectively destroyed the Gemara's Kal v'chomer. Because the whole Kal v'chomer of the Gemara was the Az Yashir was not Avdus L'cheiros, it was Misa L'chayim as well. That is the kasha of the Shagas Aryeh. And the Shagas Aryeh, because of this kasha, disagrees with Rashi. And he says the Kal v'chomer is not from Az Yashir, the Kal v'chomer is from the Shira Klal Yisrael sang, the Hallel they sang when they left Mitzrayim. But Rashi says, no, the Kal V'chomer is from the Oz Yashir. And therefore we have a Choiv Kadosh, a holy obligation to defend Rashi, that how could you say that the Shira the Gemara is referring to is the Shira of Oz Yashir? The Shira of Oz Yashir was not Avda Secheres, it was Misa L'Chaim. So I want to share with you a very important idea. And that is...
When we talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim, we always talk about it in the context of Avda Secheres.
Correct.
We never talk about it from Misa L'Chaim. We always talk about it from Avda Secheres.
But we can't ignore the fact that on the seventh day it wasn't only Me'avda Secheres anymore, it was Misa L'Chaim.
Oh, we had Hashem protected us, the Makos took us out, and we in the Midbar, and we survived the Midbar. So, we didn't have to threat as much, perhaps, after all, what happened to Paro and the Mitzvah, as we did with the Takana of Haman and Achashverosh. Maybe it's not quite so the Zera for Nisa as it was in...
But it was a life-threatening situation. Okay. If you look in the Yerushalmi says like this, that whenever the Rebbeinu Shem performs a miracle and saves the Jewish people, we need to sing Shira. So the Yerushalmi says, so why didn't we sing Shira right when we left Mitzrayim? The Yerushalmi says the following words. You see the Yerushalmi? Shniyahi. It's secondary.
1 second.
What's secondary? So the Pnei Moshe and the Karban Ha'ida explain on the Yerushalmi that when we left Mitzrayim, we were not completely freed yet. We were not fully freed yet.
I'm so sorry about it. Did anyone pull into the driveway of Miniman, maybe?
That we weren't exactly free yet. What does that mean, we weren't exactly free? So the Yerushalmi says Shniya here. Shniya here means Yetzias Mitzrayim was secondary. When we left Mitzrayim and we were really, for all intents and purposes, free, were we really free? So the Mefarshim on the Yerushalmi explained, not fully. It was only the beginning of the freedom. Because as long as our masters are still alive and they're still in power, they could always run after us and take us back and capture us. Bring us back to Mitzrayim, and we'd be Avadim again. An Eved that's boireach me'adoinav, an Eved that runs away from its master, is the Eved free? The Eved's not free until the master dies, because the master could always come and take the Eved back. So even though we went free on the first day of Pesach, the Gemar of the Geula did not happen until the seventh day. The Shach al HaTorah, you see it at the bottom of the right-hand side, on the second, flip over your page. The right-hand side, the bottom of the page, the Shach al Torah says, that yes, when we left Mitzrayim, we were free, but so long as our Adoinav, our masters, were alive, we still have the fear that they could always come and reclaim us and take us back as their Avadim. The Gemar Geula, the finality of the Geula, did not take place until Kriyas Yamsuf. So listen carefully. At Kriyas Yamsuf, really two things were happening. Number one, we were going free. It was Me'avda Secheres. You say, no, it wasn't Me'avda Secheres. Avda Secheres happened on day one. No. Avda Secheres did not happen on day one. The Mefarshim on the Yerushalmi say Avda Secheres began on day one. But if an Eved runs away from his master and the master is still alive, then the Cherus is not complete until the master dies. So the beginning of the Cherus occurred on day one. The end of the Cherus, the completion of the Cherus, was not complete until day 7. So at Kriyas Yamsuf, listen carefully, two things were happening. We were going Me'avdas L'Cherus, no question, because the Avdas L'Cherus was not complete on day 1. The Avdas L'Cherus was not complete until day 7. And let's not forget about the fact that on day 7, we were also going Mimi Salachayim, because our lives were on the line, and our lives were in danger, and Rebbeinu Shem saved our lives. Comes in Netziv, in the Hamek Davar, and Netziv says, what were we singing Shira for on day 7? Were we singing Shira on day 7 for Me'avdas L'Cherus? Or are we singing Shir on day 7 for Mimisa L'Chayim? It was Meyavdas L'Cheros. Kriyas Yam Suf was the Shira for Yetzias Mitzrayim. So they should have sang it 7 days earlier. 7 days earlier, no guarantees. Maybe the Mitzrayim would chase after them, which they did, and bring them back. So the main Yeshua of Kriyas Yam Suf was the final salvation of Yetzias Mitzrayim. When an Eved runs away, the Eved is not free until the master is dead. Vayosha Hashem Vayoim Hahu Es Yisrael Miyad Mitzrayim Vayar Yisrael Es Mitzrayim Meisal Sfas Hayom. When Klal Yisrael saw Mitzrayim dead al Sfas Hayom, that was the Yeshua of the Yitzia from 7 days earlier. So even though in our minds Az Yashir was a song for Mimisa L'Chayim, but the Gemara, according to Rashi, is saying differently. According to Rashi, look at the words of the Gemara. You see the Gemara on Daf Yudalet over there, on Megillah? The Gemara says, Uma me'avdos l'cheiros amrinon shira. That means the Gemara is saying that Az Yashir is a song, me'avdos l'cheiros. What do you mean? It was Misa L'Chayim. No, that's not what they're singing for. They sang Shira for the Yitzia, but the Yitzia is not complete until day 7. Mamela, this answers the kasha of the Shagas Aryeh on Rashi. Shagas Aryeh asked on Rashi that day 7 wasn't Avdos L'Cheros, it was Misa L'Chayim. The answer is, you're right, it's Misa L'Chayim, but the Shira of Az Yashir was Me'avdos L'Cheros. But that happened 7 days earlier. Yeah, but no guarantees. Right? No guarantees until it's finalized. And when is it finalized? When the master is dead.
But Israel afterwards said, we want to go back. Right? Slow.
That was afterwards. They were hungry.
In their mind, even then, after Kriyas Yamsuf, they still had this Avdos mentality.
But the Geula, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, was complete at Kriyas Yamsuf. So now we understand, Shvi'i Shel Pesach, it's not a Chag B'fnei Atzmai, like Shmini Atzeres. Shvi'i Shel Pesach is just the grand finale of Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's two stages of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The first stage is we run away, but still we have the fear maybe the Mitzrayim will chase after. The main connection of Kriyas Yamsuf to Shvi'i Shel Pesach was the Me'avdos L'Cheros, not the Mimisa L'Chayim. So coming back to the Magen Avraham, the Magen Avraham paskins that if a person says Az Yashir, they're mekayim the mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. And Nechsam Sofer asked, what do you mean you're mekayim Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim? But the pasuk says Laman Tizkaras Yoim Tzeisto Me'eretz Mitzrayim. You don't commemorate leaving Mitzrayim. You have to commemorate the day we left. And Az Yashir was not the day we left. Comes Rabbi Yerucham Oshen, Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood, he says, Az Yashir is a song for what? A song for what happened on the 7th day? Or it is Lemafreya, the song that we're singing for the first day?
The whole scenario, right?
Az Yashir is thanking Hashem that He took us out 7 days earlier. It's just that we couldn't sing because we didn't know that it was final. Yeah, we left on day 1. It's just we don't know that day 1 meant anything until the 7th day when on the 7th day when Klal Yisrael saw the Mitzrayim dead, they realized that on day 1 when they left it was fait accompli. So Az Yashir is a song not for the 7th day. It marks that on the first day they left for good. Therefore, the Magen Avraham paskins correctly that if you sing Az Yashir, you're mekayim the mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim, but it's not Yom Tzeischa. It absolutely is Yom Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim. It's Az Yashir is the song in gratitude that when the first day we left Mitzrayim, we're gone for good.
So why don't we do the Korban Pesach and Shvi'i Shel Pesach?
Aye. But the Mechilta Rabbi Kiveger asked from says that if someone talks about Kriyas Yamsuf and they don't mention Yetzias Mitzrayim Lo Yatsa, you're right. If you just talk about Kriyas Yamsuf and you say Yamsuf Lohem Bakata, just mentioning Kriyas Yamsuf has no reference back to the first day of Pesach. But the Magen Avraham didn't say it's good enough to mention Kriyas Yamsuf. The Magen Avraham said you have to sing Az Yashir. Because Az Yashir is the designated specific song that Klal Yisrael sang for the first day. They just couldn't sing it until the seventh day. So this it gives a very clear explanation and understanding of the Pesach of the Magen Avraham, and answers the Kasha of Chassam Sofer and Rabbi Kiveger, and gives us an understanding of the connection between Shvi'i Shel Pesach and the rest of Pesach. It's not a Yom Tif Bifnei Atzmai. It's not a new miracle. It marks the grand finale. It marks the period, the point in time that we knew that on the day that we left Mitzrayim, as Yom Tzeischa, we weren't coming back. We'll never see Mitzrayim. Eis Asher Yisem Mitzrayim Hayom Lo Yisoisifan L'Roisam Oid, that we'll never see them again. And we should be Zoicha to have a Yom Tif of Cheiros Olam, and we should be Zoicha to have a Chag Kosher V'Sameach, and be Makriv. We still have a few days to get ourselves together to be Makriv the Karim Pesach. Zoich V'Noichal Sham Min HaZvachim U'Min HaPsachim. Agun Yom Tif.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.